May 1925. Paris, France. A single torn calendar page marks the month, pinned at a slight angle to a bare archival surface, one strip of masking tape holding it in place. It is an unremarkable sheet of paper, the kind that gets torn off and forgotten. But on this page, one of the strangest confidence tricks of the century begins. It is a story that was later told and retold so often that historians still argue over its details. But the beginning is certain. A well-dressed stranger arrives in the City of Light carrying nothing but a suitcase, some forged documents, and an audacious idea. A well-dressed man checks into the Hotel de Crillon under a false name. He carries government stationery he has forged himself and a plan already forming in his mind. His name, at least for this trip, is Victor Lustig. Born in Austria-Hungary in 1890, by the time he reaches Paris, he has already lived under more than 40 aliases in more than half a dozen countries. He speaks 5 languages. He carries business cards claiming he is a count, an engineer, a psychiatrist, whatever the mark requires. His arrival is quiet, deliberate, and completely unremarkable. Nobody pays attention to him, and that is exactly how he wants it. That week, a French newspaper runs a small item about the Eiffel Tower. It is a brief notice folded into the routine news of the day, easy to miss. It notes that the structure, built in 1889 as a temporary exhibit, has fallen into disrepair. Rust streaks its iron lattice. Maintenance costs climb every year, and city officials privately grumble about tearing it down rather than paying for it. For most readers, the story is little more than bureaucratic complaint, worth a glance and nothing more. But Lustig reads the article twice. Then he sees what no one else in Paris sees, an opportunity disguised as an official grumble. He studies the tower, its rusted girders, its aging ironwork, and he decides calmly that he will sell the Eiffel Tower. Not because he owns it, because no one else in the city has yet thought to try. He sketches the idea in his mind the way an engineer sketches a blueprint. Carefully, methodically, one line at a time. Working alone in his hotel room, he forges a full set of government documents. He copies the letterhead of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs, the ministry that coincidentally actually did oversee the tower's upkeep. His forged papers state that the tower has become too expensive to maintain, and that the government has quietly decided to sell it for scrap before the public finds out an objects. He drafts the documents with real bureaucratic language, dry, procedural, boring. Exactly the kind of writing nobody questions. He adds seals, stamps, official signatures, every detail that makes a document look like it passed through the correct hands. The paper is convincing because it is boring. It looks like work that nobody would bother to fake, and that, of course, is precisely the point. The desk is covered with drafts, corrections, and discarded attempts, and the finished documents carry the weary authority of an office that has been doing this for years. Then he selects his targets. From the city's business directory, Lustig chooses 6 of the wealthiest scrap metal dealers in Paris. He circles their names one by one, studying each entry as though he were an auditor. He sends each one a formal secret letter, inviting them to a private meeting at the Hotel de Crillon, one of the most expensive hotels in the city, chosen deliberately to project authority. He signs the letters as the Deputy Director General of the Ministry, and the title that does not exist under that name, attached to a man that does not exist either. The letters are discreet, confidential, stamped, and sealed. They arrive at 6 addresses across Paris, and each one lands on the desk of a man who believes He has been selected for something important. Each envelope carries the same weight, the sense that an invitation of this kind does not come twice. All 6 men arrive. They gather in a meeting room of quiet opulence, unaware that the man before them has rehearsed every gesture. Lustig, dressed immaculately, plays the role of a tired, overworked government official, a man burdened by an unpleasant duty. He tells them the sale must remain absolutely confidential. Public sentiment, he explains, would never tolerate the demolition of a national monument, even one the government privately considers a costly embarrassment. He says this with visible reluctance, as if he too regrets what must be done. He lets his shoulders drop, lowers his voice, speaks of the paperwork with weary authority. The men believe him completely. Around that long table, 6 successful businessmen lean forward, and not one of them thinks to ask a single question. They are men who spend their lives reading contracts and spotting weaknesses, and yet here, in this quiet room, not one of them notices that the government official has no answers to give. Lustig takes all 6 on a private tour of the tower itself, walking them through its ironwork, gesturing at rust patches as proof of decay, speaking in the flat, procedural tone of a civil servant simply following orders. He points out where the metal has thinned, where the paint has worn away, where repairs would cost more than the structure was worth. The tower looms over them, enormous and indifferent, its lattice casting intricate shadows. He talks about demolition costs, salvage value, timelines, numbers delivered with such bored confidence that they seem to have been pulled from a file drawer. Throughout the tour, he studies each man closely, watching for one trait above all others: insecurity, the hunger to belong to something exclusive. He finds it in a dealer named André Poisson. Poisson is newer to Paris's business elite than the other 5, still uncertain of his standing among them, still eager to prove that he belongs at that table. Lustig senses this immediately and singles him out. The others leave the tower believing they have seen a great monument condemned. Poisson leaves believing he has been noticed. He invites Poisson to a private dinner away from the other dealers, and there he shifts tactics entirely. The table is set for 2, candlelight, the quiet intimacy of a confidence built in private. He confides, quietly, almost embarrassed, that his government salary as a mid-level official is too small to support the lifestyle his position requires. He hints, carefully, that a personal payment on top of the bid would help move the paperwork through more smoothly, would guarantee that Poisson, specifically, wins the contract over the other 5 men. He frames it not as a demand, but as a favor between insiders and a discreet arrangement between 2 men who understand how the world really works. Poisson understands the implication at once. Rather than feeling suspicious, he feels flattered, chosen, let in on something. He agrees. He believes he is buying his way into an exclusive circle, and he is willing to pay for the privilege. He never once considers that the man across the table has nothing to sell. He pays Lustig a substantial bribe separate from his winning bid for the scrap rights to the tower. An envelope passes quietly under the table. A handshake seals the arrangement. In exchange, Lustig hands him a set of forged ownership papers, signed, sealed, and entirely worthless. Within a day, Lustig has already left Paris. He boards a train bound for Vienna carrying the equivalent of more than $100,000 in cash, a fortune in 1925. The train slides out of the station, steam drifting past the platform, and the man who sold the Eiffel Tower settles into his seat with a suitcase full of money. The landscape rolls past the window, and the city shrinks behind him. He does not look back. André Poisson, meanwhile, is left holding paperwork for a monument he does not own and never did. When he finally realizes what has happened, he does not go to the police. The shame of admitting he paid a bribe to a government official who never existed is worse, to him, than the financial loss itself. He stays silent. Weeks pass in Paris with no arrest, no headline, no scandal. The newspapers stay blank, the police desks stay empty, and no one comes looking. The calendar pages turn one by one and the city moves on, which meant, as far as Lustig could tell from Vienna, that the confidence trick had worked exactly as planned, cleanly, quietly, and without consequence. The tower still stands over Paris, its silhouette unchanged above the city, and the man who sold it is already gone. It was never his to sell. It was never dismantled, never scrapped, never in real danger. And yet, for a few weeks in 1925, 6 successful businessmen believed with complete certainty that it had been sold, because a stranger with forged stationery told them so and looked tired while he said it. The paperwork is lost to time now, and the money was spent long ago. What remains is only the story itself, the man who sold the Eiffel Tower, twice in legend, once in fact, to a buyer, too ashamed to tell anyone he had been fooled.